and thank you for joining me here for this video today. Now, as you can see, some things are a little bit different today, and I thought I would do this video in a rather different style from what I would normally do, because I wanted to touch on a subject that has really been a long while in the making here on YouTube, as I have sought to understand a bit more about what I am, how I approach this activity that I do, why I do these things, and what it is that I really am trying to achieve when I put makeup on. What it is I'm doing, why am I doing this, why am I doing this stuff online, and what am I? So with that in mind, I thought I would go through the subject of labels, what I am, and how I would explain myself to you if you felt the need to put a label on me. Now, the first thing I would say is that to anyone out there who feels you need to put a label on someone in order to understand them, then the only real label that we need to apply to someone, generally speaking, should be human. If you're human, then you should have respect for all those other bits and pieces. But as a society, we're quite used to drawing binary lines between different things, lines of division, lines of understanding where we group people together and say, you're one of those ones, therefore I will treat you all like this. And that's something that I think is a reality, hence why I'm addressing this kind of stuff in this video. But I also think it's a real shame, and it's a real problem with human culture. But it's endemic. It's something that is embedded and rooted deeply in our need to belong to something and to know how to identify and deal with those who don't belong to our thing, whatever that is. And we have multiple different things. It seems like a very tribal thing, but you see it everywhere. It's prevalent in human society at all levels. So what I thought I would do today is just to tackle a few issues about language. What are the problems that we have with the use of language? So when I come onto YouTube or in chat comments or whatever else that I do and I use terms, there's no guarantee, particularly in our sort of modern environment around trans issues, that the terms that I use are going to be equally understood. So for the purposes of this video, what I thought I would do is I thought I would go through the dictionary definitions of certain terms. Now, they may not be your agreed definition. You may not agree with what these terms mean. You may not agree with this, and that's fine. But just be aware that these terms are used differently. And for the purposes of this video, I'm going to use the dictionary definitions and none others, just to ensure that at the very least, I can always refer back to those. And if anyone out there has any concerns about the terms I'm using, or is any confusion about this, that is my clear definition that I'm using. Where I can, I've used the Oxford English Dictionary, just for clarification. And that's been my kind of guiding point. Some terms I wasn't able to access because you got to pay to see the Oxford English Dictionary. And more modern terms, I've had to rely on stuff that's copy-pasted to other dictionary sites on the internet. But I haven't seen any issues with the terms that have been defined there. So the other thing about language is that, I don't know all the terms. There are terms I discovered whilst researching this video, which I find very interesting. They're things that maybe people who are a little bit more plugged into political discussions, that kind of stuff, may be more familiar with. But I thought they'd be worth looking at today. And maybe some of these are things you haven't heard yourself. Also, language moves very fast, especially in this area of trans rights, cross-dressing, whatever you want to call it. There is a very quick pace to this, and a lot of these terms can move faster than perhaps we're comfortable with. Maybe we think to ourselves, this is going too fast, these things are changing, I don't know where I am from day to day. And for that reason, it's a good place to start with at least some form of fixed reference, so you know where I'm coming from in this video. So thinking about terms themselves, these are some of the commonly used terms that I chose to review today. We have trans asterisk, transsexual, gender dysphoric, transgender, transvestite / crossdresser, and genderqueer / gender fluid. And I've written down here the dictionary definitions of each of those, along with some general indications of whether I think these are for me. So the term trans, it's one of those terms that is associated in the past with transsexual, with transvestite, Therefore, they're two very, very different things. So its origin as a term of use is just a shortening of other words. Whether that word is transsexual, transvestite, transgender, whatever it is, it's a shortening of other words. And today we think of it as being more commonly used in association with a shortening of transgender. We'll get on to transgender and what the dictionary definition of that is in just a second. In addition, there's this new term, which is relatively new, which is called trans asterisk. A lot of times the asterisk isn't pronounced, though often it's written on the page. And this is a specifically kind of designed, included term, which is meant to be a transversal umbrella term. Now, if you're using it verbally, unless you say the asterisk, then no one knows that's what you said. But written down on the page, it's very clear. Trans with the asterisk is a umbrella term, and it is designed to be inclusive. Including terms like gender fluid, agender. It's an inclusive term for everyone who has some level of non-cisgender identity. Anyone that's non-cisgendered with their gender identity. That would include me. Hence why to me that sounds like a really, really good term. So if I use trans or trans asterisk, that's what I mean. Anyone that's not cisgendered, I include myself in that. Transsexual. Now this is a term a lot of people don't like. Transsexual is a term that feels quite dated to some people. It also feels sort of that it has connotations because of its inclusion of the word sex, maybe something to do with sex work or something to do with wanting to change who you are because of some kind of maybe lustful thing, or it's just an inconvenient term. But I'm using the term today purely because of its dictionary definition of someone who has an emotional and psychological, a deep mental knowledge that their gender does not match their birth sex. And this includes, according to the dictionary definition, this would include anyone who is pre-op, post-op, someone who is on hormones, not on hormones, someone who internally in their gender identity knows that although their body may be male, they are female. Knows that though their body may be female, they are male. Clear cut. Basically, they exist in a binary world, but they're just on the wrong side of it. Very different to other terms like pangender, to agender, to bigender. People who are perhaps genderqueer, very, very different. It's sort of living in a binary world. Born male, know you're female. Born female, know you're male. And that's a quite specific group, hence my use of the term transsexual to describe that today. I don't mean any offense by that. If you find that too offensive, then I use it today purely to avoid confusion with other terms, which I will come on to now. So gender dysphoric. Now I've put this in here just to, again, highlight the actual emotional difference, something that I do not subscribe to. I don't have this myself. Just to draw a clear line between myself and anyone who has this and suffers from this. When I look in a mirror, I don't see someone that isn't right. I see someone I'm fine with. I like to change it. I like to do different things with what I see in the mirror. But it isn't wrong. I don't live in a binary gender world in that sense. I don't necessarily believe in male, female, man, woman, and nothing in between. I believe that gender is a spectrum, and I think I'm at neither end of that spectrum. Therefore, I wouldn't consider myself to be transsexual, and I don't suffer from any internal, emotional, or psychological doubt, difficulty, pain, suffering, whatever you want to call it. I don't suffer that when I look in a mirror. So clearly, I'm not transsexual. Clearly, I'm not gender dysphoric. But as I've established earlier, I do consider myself to be trans. Now then, on to transgender. This is a funny one because transgender is often used today as a sort of, as a general umbrella term, but a lot of people use transgender in place of transsexual. I have used them separately today, again by their strict dictionary definitions as I've looked them up. And transgender is defined as someone whose sense of gender identity does not correspond to their birth sex. Whether that is an exact opposite, so whether that is your gender perception is that your gender identity is the opposite gender to your birth sex, which would make you also transsexual. You're transgender, but you're also transsexual. If you believe that your gender identity is different to your birth sex, you don't entirely identify as being like I am. I'm born male, but I don't always identify being pure male. I identify as female elements to me as well, but not all the time. That makes me transgender, but not transsexual. If you want to use the term transgender when you mean transsexual, be aware that you can use it one way, but it doesn't work the other way. Not all transgender people are transsexual, but you could describe all transsexual people as transgender. And that's fine, but it's an umbrella term that includes more people than just transsexual people. Again, if you don't like the terms, apologies for that. I'm using them today purely because of what they are at their dictionary definition level. So I would consider that transgender covers me. It does. My gender identity is not exactly aligned with my birth sex. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. That makes me problematic for some people, especially if you want to believe in a binary gender identity system. If you want to believe that you're born male or female, your brain is male or female, and you are either comfortable with that, in which case you're cisgender, or you are uncomfortable with that, in which case you're trans. But there are plenty of other people out there who don't see gender in the same way, and they don't see it in those binary terms of male and female, as I don't. I see it as somewhere in between, a blurring, a blending, a mix-up, whatever, which would make me transgender. Now, transvestite/crossdresser. This is an interesting one because this is a very, very old term. Both of these are very, very old terms, which means that they struggle to move with the times and struggle to perhaps help people to understand the way we think today. I use both these terms to describe myself, but they're what I do. They're not what I am. So I cross-dress. I dress up in clothing that people associate with the other genders. That makes me a cross-dresser. I do that. But it doesn't define what I am. It doesn't define my mental state. It doesn't define my gender identity. My gender identity is not cross-dresser. It's also not cis. So I must be somewhere in trans. I'm fine to say that I cross-dress, but that doesn't make me a cross-dresser and therefore not trans. Cross-dressers, in my opinion, are under the trans umbrella. The last term is gender fluid, genderqueer. Now these are two new terms that are relatively, they've been around for let's say, recent decades, especially genderqueer, which, is part of a reclaiming of this term queer and of being proud of being different. These are terms that I really, really do identify with these days because they nicely define myself. I don't think of myself as being a bloke who puts on a dress. That's what I do sometimes, but it's not what I am. And I do think of myself as being gender fluid. I have a non-binary approach to gender. I like to express masculinity. I like to express femininity. I like to dress masculinely. I like to dress femaly or femininely. But when I do so, I don't look in the mirror and feel wrong one way or the other. I feel fine depending on how I kind of wake up that day. Now this makes me, again, problematic because I'm one of these I want to have it all type people. I want to be able to do what I want, when I want, and for some people, that's difficult because they want to put you in a box and say, you're one of those ones. You must always want to be that way. And the other problem for some people is that I'm very happy being this. I don't suffer from, these days, from any sort of emotional trauma about this. But that's because I get to do what I want to do. I get to dress like this. I get to come on screen and do these things. I get to talk about what I do. I get to, I get to go out. I'm not happy because because there's nothing complicated about my life. I'm not happy because because it's a breeze being what I am. I'm happy because I get to do it and I don't feel ashamed about it. So my happiness comes from being comfortable with who I am. I assume that if you are transsexual, again using those terms, if you are transsexual, and if you have transitioned, and if you look in the mirror and you recognize yourself as who you've always known that you are, and you've had all that help and support, I would assume that hopefully you would feel the same level of comfort, the same level of happiness that I feel now that I am comfortable with my gender role. So I hope you would feel that same thing. I assume that's what you feel. I don't know, I don't experience it, but that's my empathy with you. That's what I assume you get. And I really hope that's the case. Hopefully that would make you understand. Think of me as someone who has been through all the difficult times, the binge eating, the drinking, the depression, the misery of not knowing what I am and not being comfortable with what I am, and I'm out the other side of that now and I'm happy. I've been through, don't take this the wrong way, I've been through my transition and I'm now at the other side, and some people will like what I am, some people won't. I do, my family gets on with it, that's kind of all that matters. So these are the terms. Now I just wanted to demonstrate this very quickly. These are a group of the terms. I chucked in tranny in there as a pejorative, which a lot of people don't like. It'll disappear off the screen in a minute. But I thought I'd just kind of throw a few of these things up on the screen and then try and organize them in the way that I see these when I think about these on a regular basis. So how do I think about these terms? I kind of organize them like this. I have the concept of umbrella terms, trans asterisk, transgender. Based on dictionary definitions, this is how I use them. You may use them differently. I use those three terms as umbrella terms for anyone who is non-cis. If you're trans asterisk, transgender, to me you're non-cis. That's all you are. It doesn't tell me anything about what you specifically are, except that you have a non-cis gender identity. That's it. Below that, I then think about pure perception versus physical expression. And for me, gender dysphoria and transsexualism, these are things which are based on almost like a pure gender perception. If you have gender dysphoria, if you are transsexual, to me that means that your perception of your gender, regardless of how you express your gender, makes you transsexual. Okay, if you are a genetic man, your gender identity is female. I don't care whether you are dressed in makeup, wearing clothes, wearing women's clothes. I don't care if you're pre-op, you're post-op. To me, it doesn't matter what you are, where you are in your transition. It doesn't matter what you look like. You are, to me, transsexual. And if you have gone through whatever legal hoops your local government wants to put in your way in order to be able to be legally recognized as the gender of your gender identity and have that recognized and go through whatever steps you're comfortable with to address your dysphoria, then you have my complete congratulations and I'm my complete support, and I think you should have all the support that you need to be able to do that. That makes you transsexual at any stage. I don't think you need to have gone through surgery to be transsexual, and I don't think you need to prove at a physical level that your gender identity is something that you'll carry through physically. I know some people feel differently about that, but that's how I feel about these things. I think if we're going to recognize that your gender identity is the key trigger, then I don't think you need to have gone through all those things in order to, to be treated as someone who suffers from dysphoria, for example. People who have gender dysphoria, people sometimes may think that they are not able to transition. They suffer with this. They are not able, they're transsexual. They have not been able to, for whatever reason, personal reasons, whatever the reason happens to be, it could be financial, whatever the reason is, they do not feel they're able to transition. Maybe their local government won't let them do it. Maybe it's something where you are, you're unable to do it. To me, you're still transsexual. You may manifest your desires by secretly cross-dressing, publicly cross-dressing, whatever it is. You may manifest your gender identity by cross-dressing. Even though you maybe not be on hormones, you may not have a legal recognition of your gender identity, and you may not have gone through a physical change through surgery for your gender identity. To me, that doesn't make you a cross-dresser. You're still transsexual. Cross-dressing is what you do. It's what some of us do to address our need to express a different gender identity, and that makes us all trans. Now, I put transvestite and crossdresser into the sort of physical expression because that's what they are to me. If you're changing your clothing, if you're just going out and looking differently, it's just a physical expression thing. It's not a indication of what's going on in your head. It doesn't tell me anything about what's going on in your head. You might be transsexual in your head. You might be gender fluid in your head. You might be purely turned on by it. It might be a pure turn on kick sexual thing to you. It might be a fetish. I don't know. How you dress doesn't tell me anything about what's going on in your head. And that's why when someone gets dressed up, you can't make assumptions about who they are. You can't make assumptions about where they sit on the spectrum, what kind of person they are. And another reason why these labels are fine, as long as everyone has exactly the same understanding, and as long as everyone has this shared understanding, which we don't have today. Now, I place gender fluid, gender queer in the middle there, because if I address myself as being gender fluid, gender queer, what I'm saying is that my identity is not pure male, it's not pure female. And my expression is not pure male, it's not pure female. Some people might blend their gender expression to incorporate aspects of male and female gender expression. Some people might do what I do, which is to split it based on time. I am always male or always female, except today for this video to make a point. So this is something I've done purely for today, just to make this point. But that's my view. That's why I see myself as gender fluid. My brain is not described by being a crossdresser. What is described is my gender identity, which is gender fluid, and sometimes I crossdress. So this is my application to me. I have kind of muted down the terms that have no application to me. I'm not gender dysphoric. I am not a transsexual. I do not want to transition. I have no desire to be permanently female. I'm not a woman trapped in a man's body. I am none of those things. Today I do think of myself firmly as gender fluid. This is a key part of the thought processes that I've gone through as I try to distance physical expression, just wearing clothes, with my true mental image of who I am. Now, when it comes down to what I want from society, what I want from being gender fluid, you want what everyone else wants. You want respect, you want to be tolerated, you want to be accepted, you want to be left alone to do what you want to do without fear of reprisals, recrimination, or attacks, or anything else like that. That's the dream, and that's the goal, that's what you want to achieve. What I find interesting about this is that being gender fluid is something that I have kind of thought my way into in the last 3 or 4 years, purely by asking myself the question, why I do what I do, why do I dress? It's not for sexual kicks, I don't get that from it, you know, it's, as I've said before, I don't feel more or less amorous, let's say, when I'm dressed. It doesn't make a massive difference to me, but it's clearly part of me that I want to express, and I want to be able to do that. And my happiness comes from my regularity of being able to do that. I don't want to do it every day. I don't want to live like this because I'm a bit lazy, and you know, sometimes I get up and I'm very happy, you know, with the old beard and being a typical, you know, typical hairy guy. That's fine for me. It works fine for me. So these are the terms that I see applying to me. Trans asterisk, gender fluid, gender queer. Yeah, they're bang on for me, no problems. Transgender, transvestite, crossdresser. These are things that I guess are a little bit more problematic, but you know, I make do with them. So why am I not transsexual? I don't suffer from gender dysphoria. I do not think I'm a woman trapped in a man's body, and I'm comfortable with my masculinity. You know, whatever masculinity you think I have, I'm very comfortable with it. I don't have an issue with it. So clearly I'm not transsexual. I don't have gender dysphoria. I'm not going to transition. I do not want to be the opposite gender to my birth gender. Why am I unsure about being a crossdresser? As I said, it's a physical process description. It's describing something you do physically. It does not do anything to address your mental state, to address your gender identity, the way that you perceive your gender and the way that you think of yourself within society's gender construct. It doesn't address those things. It's often as well synonymous with things like tranny and, derogatory type terms, which, I would rather stay away from, but they don't bother me too much. It's simply, one of those things that we have to be able to deal with. But to me, cross-dressing is an action. It doesn't describe who I am. So why gender fluid, gender queer? It gives me space to exist. It gives me somewhere to live as a person. It's not purely physical, and yeah, it's contemporary. It doesn't carry around a lot of the baggage that terms like transgender, transsexual, transvestite, crossdresser, these terms carry a lot of baggage. They're all terms that were coined many, many years, decades ago, and they don't necessarily fit a modern interpretation of who we are and what we do. And that goes for all of us. The same reason that perhaps transsexuals don't like to be called transsexual because of the connotations it has and would like to maybe be called transgender is the same reason that I may wish to get away from crossdresser or to get away from transvestite as an expression of my gender identity. Generally speaking, I'm fine with them as terms. It doesn't bother me too much. But for where I am today, gender fluid, gender queer sits much better for me. So just to cover off this last thing, for anyone out there that has a concern about this, can I claim to be trans or transgender? Can I claim to be part of the LGBT community? Yes. Yes, I can. These are umbrella terms. They are umbrella terms that catch anyone that is not cis. I am not cis. However you want to think about it, I'm not transsexual either. I do not require support and I do not require assistance in dealing with my gender identity. I don't need to be legally recognized as female, and I'm going to pose a lot of problems for people because sometimes I'm the kind of person that confuses the argument for a lot of people because my gender identity, it moves, it changes, it flip-flops. I want to do everything. And for that reason, when you are, let's say, fighting for your right to be legally recognized as a woman, though you were born a man, someone like me can seem problematic, I'm sure. Trans, transgender, these are the T in LGBT. I absolutely am trans. I'm clearly not cis, so I am trans. I may not be your kind of trans. I may not be the kind of trans that you identify as. I certainly may not be the kind of trans that you like, or you think are worthy, or you think are attractive, whatever your thing is. But it doesn't change the fact that I am trans, and at times my identity and my expression do not fit into the conventional cisgendered binary world. And therefore, if I want to go to Pride and represent the LGBT community, however I want to do that, if I want to be an ally to this community, if I want to talk about these things, then that absolutely is fine to come under the LGBT umbrella. And I would include cross-dressers in that as well. This need to separate people out because you find them embarrassing, because you find them different, because you find them, you find them to be not like you. I find that incredibly hypocritical to anyone in the LGBT community. If you want to exclude people because they're not like you, because they're not your kind of trans, or they're not your kind of, non-cis gendered personality, that's remarkably narrow-sighted, because all you'll be doing is feeding the general belief that we are all to be excluded. We're either an inclusive community or we're no community at all. That's my view on this subject. Anyway, so I hope that helps you understand me a little bit better. I appreciate this has been a somewhat different video in terms of presentation, in terms of how I've come across in this one, but I wanted to get this out there and to just help to make this somewhat clear. My general perspective on this is that I'm a human being, first and foremost. The transness that I have, my gender identity, should come second to all of the rights, respect, privilege, whatever you want to call it, that should be afforded to me as a human being. Trans rights are human rights, if you want to put it that way. You know, it's a good slogan for a reason. Anyway, if you have any questions, if you want to ask me about this, please let me know in the comment section down below. I'm going to assume that if you got to this point of the video, that A, you're interested in this subject, B, you don't watch my videos in order to purely see me looking at my most feminine. So congratulations on that one. If you have any comments, please let me know in the comment section down below, or you can reach me through my email address, julietisnoir@gmail.com, or my website, julietnoir.uk. I look forward to talking to you all in the next video, and as ever, bye! Bye!